Mission 4, start!
Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game Esoterica and a continuing series, Metal Slug Madness, where I took a look at the entire Metal Slug franchise and not only review the games, but talk about the history and evolution of the series. And I am super excited this week because we are playing Metal Slug 3, and it is hands down my favorite Metal Slug game of all time. Before we get too far in live, do me a huge favor, go down below, hit like, subscribe, and that notification bell definitely helps us out. If you feel so inclined to like what we do here and want to support the channel, I have a Patreon link down below as well. But right from the start, you can tell that Metal Slug 3 is going to be different than the last two games in the series. Because as opposed to fighting human soldiers, we have these gigantic crab monsters, which is an evolution of those crab-looking boss characters from the second game, NX. Now there's a little bit of a bummer though, and that is that this is the last Metal Slug game that would be directly developed by the old SNK we knew and loved, because Metal Slug 4 has new developers that do a much worse job of making a Metal Slug game, because this is when SNK was having financial problems and was kind of turning over into Playmore and having third-party companies contract. But you'll see right here, a new feature to the series is we have branching paths. We can go up or we can go in the sub. And I'll kind of spoil next week's episode, but we're going to be taking a look at In the Hunt by IREM, because a lot of the developers from that company went over to SNK, and you can definitely tell where this aquatic theme came from, because In the Hunt is basically Metal Slug in a ship. But you see, as these giant eels Barbie come out here, this is where the game's sense of humor peaks for me. You have these giant jellyfish in these bubbles, you have huge eels with names coming out of tanks, you have different crab monsters, and very shortly we're going to have aliens as well. This is why I love Metal Slug 3 so much, because it's just the weirdest and quirkiest entry in the series. Now I'm sure I'm going to see a lot of comments down below telling me why X is the better game, and that's totally fair. This is a photo finish, and to me it is only down to how the game looks and sounds and feels, because the soundtrack to this game was made by Noise Factory, and they were a great developer. They did the music for Matra Melee, so I think I'm just partial to liking a game like Metal Slug 3 ever so slightly more than Metal Slug X. But if Metal Slug 3 to me is a 10 out of 10 game, then Metal Slug X is a 9.99 out of 10. That's how close they genuinely are, in my own opinion. Now, one of the great things about Metal Slug 3 compared to the first three games that came before it is SNK ironed out a lot of the slowdown that plagued the original games, X being the worst. Metal Slug 3 definitely has slowdown in spots, but I would say it's the best performing game in the entire franchise. And I just love the boss battles, because now we don't just have enemies that look like crabs or crustaceans, we just have straight up crabs. We have a hermit crab with a battle tanker on his back. I love how it animates, I love how it looks, because the game was always going towards this sort of crab theme, but Metal Slug 3 just drives it home and says, screw it, we're not going to make things look like crabs, we're just going to straight up have crabs, and it's a ton of fun. But here is why I absolutely love Metal Slug 3, because in X and 2, the mummies were a fun mechanic, but when we get to the zombies, it's just amazing. You get turned into a zombie, you move slower, and you get this great animation. But you do still have your bomb attack, but it is red projectile vomit. It's just so much fun. And if you are going to play one version of 3, definitely make sure you play the Japanese one, because you want all that gore and the red blood. But it's just a ton of fun, and the soundtrack in this area is spectacular as well. I usually let you listen to music later on in the video, but listen to the zombie theme, because it's perfect, and I'll be back in like 30 seconds and tell you more why Metal Slug 3 is the top tier game in the series. But enjoy. It's just perfect for a horror setting, and I mentioned earlier in the video that Noise Factory did all the music for this game, and because I love Mad for Melee so much, mostly for its insane soundtrack, this game has everything I want in music. Like I mentioned earlier, Metal Slug 3 is where the game franchise really just goes into left field and says we're going to do whatever we want, because now we have a boss battle not against 1 or 2 or 3, but 6 different aliens with these weird single eyes on these stalks. We didn't see anything like this in Metal Slug 1, we didn't see anything like this in Metal Slug 2, and we only got one tiny little alien preview in X. But 3, the aliens come out in full force. And while arcade game stories aren't super important and you really need to read it online because it's not in the game that much, but basically General Morden, after his defeat, makes a deal with some aliens to try to come back. That's as much as you really need to know. But the boss battles just go on, because those 6 aliens were just the first stage. Now we have this gigantic egg-looking thing, or kind of looks like another thing, but I'm not going to say what I think, and it's shooting down these monoliths, very 2001 A Space Odyssey feeling, and you just need to continually not get hit by them and shoot them down while also hitting your boss opponent. There's just a ton of things going on, it's always moving wildly, and it always has a really good feel to it, because mechanically this game also I feel like is the best performing as far as the gameplay is concerned of the original 4 games. But again, you can see how much inspiration that Metal Slug 3 takes from a lot of the developers' previous games, because when I show you guys in the hunt next week, you're going to 100% know where these underwater environments come from. But again, there's just so much attention to detail put into the game. All those enemies come down and they've got aquatic suits on with diving bell helmets. We're wearing the same. We have all these tanks falling from these buildings. It's just so much fun. And those tanks and those falling bridges, remember those if you watch my episodes each week, because you're going to be seeing where they came from next Wednesday. But as we move inside, again, the game is just going to take another completely different pivot, and we're going to have these sentry bots and sentry cameras. Metal Slug 3 in a lot of ways feels like a console game and not an arcade game. It is definitely the longest in the franchise. It has the most branching paths and replayability. This feels like SNK was making a game for the home AES market, and they also wanted to sell it to the arcades, versus what the older games felt like, which were arcade games that would inevitably get home console ports on the AES. But again, as we move forward, things just get more and more fun. Metal Slug 3 just puts a massive smile on my face, because while this is not crab-based, we have basically what amounts to a giant wind-up robot as our boss for this stage. And this is a long fight. Metal Slug 3 is quite difficult, and the bosses have a ton of hit points. You're going to be fighting a boss for 30 seconds to a minute, if not longer, if you aren't great at the game. But I really enjoy that because it gives it longevity. And go ahead and get a little more taste of the music because it's so diverse and amazing. I want you to hear it, and I'll be right back. It's just a ton of fun to listen to that. I would say that Noise Factory probably did the best work as far as arcade game soundtracks of any developer's games I have ever played. But now moving on, we have giant Venus flytraps running around trying to eat you. We have these bugs that carry you up into the sky and eat out the back of your spine and drop you down. There's so many frames of animation in each death. They're just so much fun. When you die, you know it was your fault and you're a little bummed about it, but you love to watch the different animations on how you died and just kind of get a good laugh at them. Now this item here, we could open that hatch and go somewhere else, but I wanted to go forward in this instance. But that's the other fun part about Metal Slug 3. You get to go back and play it again and see a completely different game, because pretty much every level has a branching path. And right before we get to the boss, we just get these gauntlets where we have to destroy everything. But this next boss battle, this game came out in 2000. The PlayStation was on the horizon. We had things like Dreamcast, but Neo Geo being old hardware, this looks as good if not better than any 2D game on the Dreamcast, on the PlayStation 2, on the GameCube, or even on the original Xbox. This to me is just incredible to look at. I can't get enough of it. And that's why Metal Slug 3 is my favorite game in the franchise. Sadly, when we get to 4, it's going to go way downhill way quickly. But leave me a comment down below. What's your favorite Metal Slug game? Give me a number. I will be back next Wednesday with another episode in the series, but do me a huge favor, go down below, hit like, subscribe, and get notification bell. It definitely helps us out. But yeah, if you've somehow never played Metal Slug 3 before, as soon as this video is over, go play it. Like now.